if we don't have, the rule is, if we don't have enough data to support the deeper remedy, do not give it. You must prefer to give it on a more superficial level. Let this clear off, and then you will see more clearly the underlying condition. This is what most of the homeopaths miss. These are the cases which they usually mess up, because they see three remedies. All the three of them, they have some symptoms to indicate, and they usually make the mistake on prescribing underlying remedies. You have to, if you see that you have given a deeper remedy and has not taken care of the case, you have to give this more superficial remedy. Then do not hesitate to go back to the remedy which you had given in the beginning and did not act. And you may see now it's acting. Bill reminded me of a case that he has seen also, that somebody was prescribing, for this case, prescribed calcarea carbonica. Okay, Bill did. Yeah. So this case was prescribed calcarea carbonica, and there was no effect, no change, a little bit of change, and then it was a dose of silica, and then it was decided that the case better be sent to me, and Bill and I, we consulted on the case, and we had a good study of it. So after I had been studying this case for about 3/4 of an hour, or I don't remember how long, quite a long time, then 2.5 hours, yeah. He exposed me. Okay, then I said to Bill, okay, in this case, we have to prescribe Azarum europaeum. Azarum europaeum. It's a seldom indicated remedy, and Bill said, what's that, and all that, but anyhow, he had to, since he was consulting me, he had to say to the patient that you must take that remedy, and the patient knew homeopathy. He says, what is that? I don't know. In Bay Area there was no Azarum, so they sent for Azarum, and she got Azarum. Then, between other symptoms, we are not concerned at this moment, there was a desire for salt, for instance, a desire for salt, a desire for sweet, and a great coldness, chilliness, very great chilliness. When we prescribed Azarum, some of the symptoms were these three. The case was not as simple as that. It was not because of desire sweets that we gave Azarum, but anyhow, she had these symptoms. She took Azarum, and then she telephoned from here to Athens to say how much worse she was. Yeah. So we listened very carefully. She said there was no effect actually, and what has happened, the freezing, the coldness was absolutely intolerable. She is completely freezing now. But in the midst of all this, she said that, how is the desire for salt? This has been reduced. How is the desire for sweet? Oh, this has been heightened. So we had in mind calcarea carbonica, of course. It had been given, it didn't work. We knew it didn't work. But now, with these new indications that we have here, calcarea carbonica was the right remedy. That means azarum produced such a change superficially that it let the underlying level come up, being clear, and then we prescribed calcarea carbonica, thinking that this is a great prescription. That was about 25 to 30 days, if I remember well. More 2 months?
We had to wait for it to mature. I remember she called, and I wanted to do something immediately, but you said that the image wasn't ready yet.
Yeah. Maybe Bill is right. There was 1.5 months. Yeah. So, after this lapse of time, we prescribed again calcarea carbonica. And after 2 months, 1.5 months, yeah, we got a telephone call that she was still in a terrible condition. But you must not be misled very easily by what the patient says every time. You have to be able to evaluate very carefully what is the information given. So, in the midst of all this complaining, she complained also about a vaginal discharge that was tremendous. It was very irritating. So when we see things when coming on the periphery, whether it is a discharge or whether it is a skin eruption, we must suspect that the remedy is responsible for that. So we inquired about a possible infection and things like that. That was excluded, and we decided to wait on the case. Of course, eventually the case went beautifully. It started after 2.5 or 3 months. It started feeling really better. And what is more beautiful is that we witness the old symptoms that she has 60 years ago, or 8 years ago, or 10 years ago, in this case 13 years ago, we witness old symptoms coming up. When we retook the case, we saw that there were indications of sulfur. So what we did, we waited, because with indications only, we don't want to spoil a case which has gone so beautifully. This is very important, that do not prescribe a remedy if you are not sure, as long as the patient is not complaining so much, because you may be spoiling the case. You may be allowed to prescribe a deep remedy when the person is desperate and you don't know what to do. But you are not allowed to prescribe if the person is doing well and you just have some indication of a deeper remedy even that is going to help much more and you are excited. You say, if I give that, now she will feel absolutely wonderful. Let's do it. You may be doing a mistake. So you have to wait there. In taking a chronic case, also, I would like to commend a few things about sin cases, especially from American students, that they have taken chronic cases and they have sent to me. They tend to gather a lot of unnecessary data. We have to be precise, and also we must not intellectualize concerning the case. Many symptoms are intellectual conceptions of the patient. All this, if we suspect such a thing, we have to disregard the symptom. Or if we write it down, we don't take it into account in our studying of the case. And therefore, in every case, we have to find those symptoms which are really reliable. And reliable symptoms, usually you get with intellectuals if they are sleeping. Yeah, that's true. The position they keep in their bed, it's important. Whether they sleep on the left side or on the right side, whether they sleep on the abdomen or on the back, whether they talk during their sleep, whether they have somnambulism and they get up and scream and talk, what are their dreams are. You see, because the subconscious has taken hold of them, and then you can get some reliable data. It is strange, but you are going, those who are practicing homeopathy in the United States, because of the intellectualization of your society, you are bound to make tremendous errors while taking a chronic case. A patient comes and talks. You put in a question to him. This is usual with intellectual people. And instead of giving an answer to your question, you say, do you like bread? Or, do you like sweets? He will quote a whole theory about sweets, and then he will tell you how much should have eaten and why he's not eating so much because of such reasons. And if he is in that region and he's drinking so much water, then the amount of sweets that he's needing is more, but he does not take it. But, yeah. Okay, what do you read? Desire for sweets? No, you disregard completely. Whether he said it or not, it doesn't matter. But what it matters is that if he takes so much care about himself, then you may note a very nice symptom. Hypochondriac, natrium muriaticum, phosphorus, etc. We have remedies for that. There is a hypochondriasis about him, about how he cooks his food, how he. I had a case while I was in India of a very rich Frenchman that was traveling in India. He was taking drugs. He was spaced out, as you say. Okay? And he asked treatment. When I came to the questions of food, it was, I mean, he had made a religion out of how to cook and what degree and what kind of food should go with this, with that, together with the other thing. Even for his cat, he had a cat together with him traveling. He was cooking special food for his cat. He had been treated by many homeopaths. His father had died and left him a tremendous amount of money, and he just bought a Land Rover and traveled through to India, and I met him there, and he was going from one guru to another, and he had no idea what has happened with his money in France. His brother-in-law was sending him some money, as much as he needed to live, but his amount of money was tremendous. He did not know how much it was by that time. I mean, he was in a terrible state. He was treated by many, many people. And nobody could see his remedy, because he would mislead. Every time he would mislead the practitioner. He would say, I don't like salt, I have aversion to salt, and all that. I disregarded every symptom that he told me, and I took into consideration the great anxiety about his health. He wanted to be healthy. I may have cancer, I'm going to die. And together with little other things, like his nails, how his nails were grown, how he had the ingrown toenails, how he had white spots in his nails. I prescribed nitric acid for him. Nitric. And the man, sure enough, went back to France. And he said to his brother-in-law, hey, come here. Let's see our accounts. For the first time, you know, we went together in France, actually, and that's why I know the story. Yeah. He found out, of course, that his brother had taken all his money out of him. I mean, he was taken away completely, all his money. He had signed papers that he should have never signed. I mean, I just give you an idea of the condition of the man, and at the same time, he had been treated by all kinds of homeopaths, and no homeopath would really evaluate the symptom. You have to evaluate the symptom that a patient is giving you. And you have to always have reliable symptoms to prescribe, even if there are 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 symptoms. I would like to hear some questions. I think Randy has something to say.
When you talk about the South Area case, you said that because of the symptoms changed your mind. Talk about that a little more. I think it involves the same thing that Bill was saying, that you have symptoms of case, and I had some confusion, maybe other people did too, about how much you rely on one symptom or a few symptoms as opposed to looking at the picture of the case and what that picture is.
Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, the question is whether we prescribe here a calcarea carbonica because of 2 or 3 symptoms that I just gave you, or whether we rely on the whole essence of the whole picture of the patient. You see, in this case, which I have given you, it was a case of calcarea carbonica. That it was what appeared to be. The whole picture was showing calcarea carbonica. Yet calcarea carbonica did not work. So she had all the symptomatology of the calcarea carbonica, and yet calcarea would not work. When she took asarum, then a few symptoms changed and determined by this change the choice on the calcarea carbonica. Then the whole picture became calcarea carbonica. This is what Hahnemann had talked about such kind of diseases. He called them the one-sided diseases, diseases that would not show from the very beginning a clear picture of a remedy, and you have to give a remedy. This remedy will clear, in a way, will clear up the way, and then the next remedy will do the real job. The first remedy sure will relieve the patient, but not to such an extent as to be aware of it or to admit it, but it is many times absolutely necessary because you can go deeper. And when you are deeper, you have a whole totality on which you are basing your prescription. Every time there is, at every moment, there is a characteristic picture of a patient that comes in. But when we have deep miasmatic cases in which 3, 4, 5 miasms are involved, we don't see the first miasm very clearly. We never see that. And then we have to decide what is the first remedy that we are going to give. And this is a difficult process. It's a process that can be shown. I'm going to show you some cases, and we shall see them together. And you shall see why we have decided on this, in favor of this remedy and not in favor of that remedy. And this is where the whole difficulty in homeopathy lies. It is something that cannot be learned by a lecture or 2 or 10. It is something that comes out after studying again and again, and after years of experience. I mean, these lectures are not intending to teach you homeopathy. Because in every case, almost, there is a different approach for finding the indicated remedy. On one case, you will rely completely on physical symptoms. On another case, you will rely on emotional or mental symptoms and disregard the physicals. If you get a patient who is full of mental symptoms, it's no good to prescribe on these symptoms. If you can find on this patient some physical symptoms, though he does not complain so much about them, these are more reliable symptoms to prescribe upon. I remember a case which was a case of claustrophobia, tremendous claustrophobia, and this lady could not enter any public place. She could not go to a cinema, she could not go anywhere, and she was also afraid to go away from her house in a distance of just around 2 blocks around her house. She was in a tremendous state of anxiety all the time. And we started treating her. The first thing we did, we took her away from her drugs. Then she developed, together with her anxiety and the fear of death, the wanted to kill herself, she developed a very peculiar symptom of feeling the tongue that it was so swollen that it would fill the whole of the mouth. In this case, we had to take into consideration more this particular symptom than any of her anxieties, because that was a very peculiar thing. So we were guided in our prescription mainly from these symptoms, together with one or two, and we disregarded the other 10 symptoms, and we prescribed the first remedy. The result was poor, of course, but it led us to the next remedy, which came out a little bit more clearly, and then a third, and then a fourth remedy. And it was after giving her 8 or 9 remedies that she presented the picture of hydrophobinum. And then we asked her whether she was ever bitten. Hydrophobinum is a nosode coming from rabbits, coming from the virus, rabies virus. Okay? At this point, when we saw hydrophobinum, we asked her whether she was bitten ever by a dog. And she said yes. When she was 5 years old, she was eating, and a dog bited her to get from her mouth to get the piece of bread, and she had taken what's that? The rabbit vaccine, eh? Yeah. Okay. It was prescribed hydrophobinum in a high potency, and from that moment onwards, the lady felt a real release from her symptoms. Now the question is what it would have done, what we would have done if we had prescribed, if we knew it from the very beginning that she was vaccinated and we had prescribed hydrophobinum. From my experience, nothing would have happened. So we had to do very careful prescribing for 6-8 months before we could open up really this case and we could see results. But we brought her to the state where the miasm, the miasm from the vaccine was brought. I mean, we took away 3, 4, 5 layers before the miasm of the vaccine became prominent, and we were able to treat her. Now, this kind of prescribing, of course, can be done after a lot of study on the materia medica. You will never today see cases which are very clear, a calcarea carbonica, sulfur case, a natrium muriaticum case, like they used to see in other times, in older times. Today we had tremendous complications due to medicines that we have taken, vaccines, wrong way of living, and the greatest one of the greatest factors of making people sick today, according to my opinion, is ambition. Ambition. Ambition has raised the rhythm of the whole body to such an extent that it is burning itself. And out of ambition and selfishness, we have individuals who are presenting symptoms, presenting a symptomatology which is almost completely unknown to the materia medica. So you have to see through all that. You have to understand when a man says, I am fastidious, or I don't make mistakes. So you could ask some questions, yes?
It's a very broad question. You can take it whatever way you want. But tell us something about the way you do take mentals. Important questions or getting, particularly from closed patients.
The question is, how do we get mentals, especially from closed patients? Well, I think it is very difficult to treat somebody who is very close to you, because you cannot see them objectively. And emotionally closed. Oh, I see. This, this is a skill that each one has to develop for himself. And there is no technique. I can cite you a few tricks which I use, but I don't know whether these tricks will be applicable and can be used by everybody. I have used, for instance, threatening of the patient, if he doesn't talk, to throw him out. Yeah. This is a good technique with managers of the banks, with police officers, you know. Yeah. Then nobody is threatening them ever. And suddenly they get a shock. I said, please, go out. I can't take your case if you are not going to talk. I'm not interested only on your pain. I'm interested about you. And I want to know everything. So please, talk. I'm normal. Normal in this, normal in that, normal. Everything is normal. There is nothing but a pain here on the elbow. I said, okay, go out then. Then the shock that he will have, he will produce a reaction, and sure enough, he will start talking. But if you use this same method to a little girl who comes there, she sits on the chair, and usually, you have your chair in front of your office, and it is close enough. You will see certain patients will take the chair and will push it in front of the office, and will rest and will be very close to you. And you will see other patients that will take the chair and will go back further than you. There is a girl that takes the chair and she sits as far as she can. She's very closed. She's blushing. She will say 2 symptoms that she has. If you tell to such a girl, either you talk or you go out, she will faint. Yeah. So there is no recipe. In this case, what I have found out in order to really take a case, I have found out that the best technique is interest. If you really show an interest on the patient, you are really interested to find out what is happening. This is the biggest technique, and a technique which always works. Even if you say you go out, you are interested. You don't say you go out. And I will relate you a sad case, just to show you the attitude. I was seeing a lady patient that she had come with a friend of hers, and I would see her with a doctor. So she had come there because she was not able to talk. She said, unless I get drunk completely, I cannot talk to anybody. I cannot face anybody. So she came there without having drunk, because that was the purpose, to see. Her friend brought her to see what she is like. So we asked, what do you feel? No answer. So, wouldn't you like to talk? No answer. In the meantime, you could feel she was completely closed. So the friend wanted to intervene and to say, these are the symptoms. I said, please, wait. I cut a long story short. The lady, girl, 24 years old, she was an alcoholic, of course, with tremendous problems, end up talking so much that after an interview of 1 hour and a quarter, I had to go to attend to other cases. I had to go. So as she was talking happily and all that, I asked her whether she was feeling better now after all the interview. Oh, she says, I feel much better. And I said, yes, I'm sorry, I have to go. She said, oh, you have to go. Oh, what a pity. She wanted to talk more. But the doctor who was attending with me, that was a case of medorinum. The doctor that was attending with me, he said that, I think she is very spoiled. And I would like to smack her. This doctor is not working with us anymore. Because he showed me that he had no interest at all on the case. He had a mental case in front of him, and he was not really interested. He just wanted to find the remedy, to give the remedy, and have a big effect, and show how big he was. But when the girls show the real interest, and of course, in homeopathy, as you know, there are possibilities to know some of the symptomatology of the patient once you spot the remedy. So I cited some of her symptomatology, which helped tremendously to open her up. I asked her whether she was feeling this way and that way in this situation, that situation. It was so exactly to what she felt, that she felt that I knew her very much. And so she opened up completely, and she told us the whole story. Of course, this patient was a patient with cirrhosis of the liver at the age of 25, 26, due to drinking tremendous amount of liquids, of alcohol. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. It is, yeah. The gentleman says that he has trouble to understand how we could disregard the mental symptoms. Since we know that the mental symptoms are the most important in a case, and we have to prescribe on them. I didn't say that we always have to disregard the mental symptoms. But sometimes, when the symptoms, the mental symptoms, are too many and too confusing, only in this case, we may have to disregard them and go into the physical symptoms and find out what can we get from his physical symptoms. These symptoms are more reliable in such cases. Yeah, the gentleman asks whether the prescribing through the hair of a person and with a pendulum sometimes has an effect. My opinion is that this is the worst kind of homeopathy. We don't call that homeopathy, of course. I don't know what we can call it. But it is absolutely forbidden for a true homeopath to prescribe on such basis. It is absolutely unscientific. It is something which, the logic of which I cannot understand, and I do not recommend it to anybody. Yes?
Are the layers that you try to unravel, are they in sequence, like the mental layer follow a physical layer, an emotional layer, or are they heterogeneous?
Yeah. The gentleman asks whether the layers, these layers I tried to describe, are layers of, say, physical, and then we go into mental, or mental and go into physical. No, it's not like that. Every layer has symptoms which are physical and mental, and as we go deeper and deeper, we saw that mental and emotional symptoms are reducing and physical symptoms are more prominent as we go deeper in layers. Here we may have mental symptoms and emotional symptoms. Here we shall have less emotional or less mental symptoms, and on the third layer we shall have less mental symptoms and more physical.
And the older layers, are those considered older layers?
Yeah.
Are always physical?
Deeper layers, which they go in more and more to the periphery. It means that when we take away a layer, we have an amelioration of the patient. We have a betterness. We have a direction towards cure. That means the deepest part of man is cured, and then we have the more peripheral levels.
I
Yes?
nowadays there are many new allopatric drugs and chemicals beside other pathogenic substances that were around in the time of common circumstances. And is it possible that these these weren't proven in the area medicine? If you have a patient that you couldn't find a development in the area medica, how would you deal with that?
Yeah, the gentleman asks that whether today that we have so many chemicals that in the environment and we are ingesting, we have analogous remedies to deal with them. You see, the idea is that every chemical will, if there is a sensitivity on the person, will create a reaction and will create a symptomatology. Now, this symptomatology from a chemical can imitate the symptomatology of arsenicum, for instance, or sulfuric acid in the case of exhaust gases. Sulfuric acid imitates mostly, the proven of sulfuric acid imitates mostly what the exhaust gases can bring about in the human body. Yeah, but yeah, sure enough, we don't give automatically. I don't want to give hints like that, to give automatically a dose of a remedy because of some cause only, some causative factor. Yes.
You're saying that the center of the person is the mental level, and then it goes from the emotional level to the physical level at the other one. And as far as I understand Kant, he says the emotional level is the animal, is the center of the person, because that's the level which can be concealed the longest. It can be concealed the longest. So it's the real inner center of the person. And I'm wondering whether you're deviating from Kant there, and if so, what makes you think that?
Yeah, I'll repeat the question. No? Did you have anybody here? Here too. The lady asks whether Kant says that emotional level is the deepest level in man and not mental, and whether I deviate from Kant. I don't remember where Kant says this, but if even if he says, I can send a few things that maybe were not absolutely right, and it is logic that makes us think that the spirit in man is that which can really be the center of man. If man loses its spiritual entity, his mental faculties, then he is completely disintegrated and unable to perform any action. So, if you have a person with dead feelings inside, and many people, they would say that I have no feelings. This is not as bad as one who says I have no thoughts, I cannot think at all. The person that his feelings are deadened completely, a phosphoric acid patient, an aurum patient, can function in life quite efficiently and can be creative. But take that deadening and move it to the spiritual level and move it to the mental level, and you will have a person that cannot function anymore at all.
I just want to add, I think Kant says that in his aurum lecture, that it's the innermost because the person can conceal his perceptions and
Right.
conceal his mental state or mental work. But then he can, and then all of a sudden jump out of the window without anybody knowing that there was something going on.
Quite. This is correct. But when he says the innermost, it's a way of expressing himself. It is the desire to live, of course, which is lost, and that is very deep disturbance. And we don't disagree there. But when I mean, everybody can understand that when the mental faculties have been destroyed, it's much worse than the emotional faculties to be destroyed. A person with cancer also will die.
Ken's specific words were that the will and the understanding is the deepest, and that would go with the mental level.
Yeah. That's right. There is no difference actually with Kant. The only thing is that perhaps here in that exposition it's much more clear, more precise what we're talking about.
Since we're talking about the first visit, basically, how to take a chronic case and choose the right remedy, there's a common practice of trying to clear a case using methodology or an ozone. Can you comment on that in terms of
Yeah, sure. The gentleman asks whether it is proper to clear a case with an Ax vomica or with a sulfur, with a thuja, or a tuberculinum, or an osode, or different other ideas. I do not endorse such ideas for the simple reason that a remedy, I know that a remedy can work only if it is indicated. And in order to be indicated, it has to have the symptoms of the remedy. Unless the symptoms of the remedy are there, the remedy is not going to work. Never mind what our ideas might be, our notions. Yes? Yes, sorry. Yes? Yes. The symptoms of azarum, the characteristic symptoms of azarum was there when we prescribed azarum. But these symptoms of azarum could be duplicated by calcarea carbonica also. Yes. The Bach-Bowel, what is my opinion about the Bach-Bowel nosode? I have no experience with the bowel nosodes, and I haven't found that they are not needed, at least in our practice. Yes. Could you repeat the question? Yes. Not to my knowledge, because as you understand, people who are coming... The lady asks whether I have seen other kind of therapies that can clear up miasmatic layers. And my answer is that since people are coming to me to be treated, that means the people who are coming are those who have not been cleared. And they may have come from other therapies, have tried other therapies, but they come to us just because they have not been well. So I cannot say whether there is or there is not any other system. Here's the gentleman. Yeah. The remedy should be prescribed once and then wait to see what it does. If eventually there is a relapse, then you may repeat the remedy, but not before. Yeah, if it's antidoted, then we repeat the same potency. We repeat the same potency. If it is not antidoted, I shall complete more the answer. If it is not antidoted, and it has exhausted, let us say, its action, then we give it on a higher potency. Yes?
Are you proving the spiritual aspect versus the mental or the aspect
Could you please repeat more clearly?
Are you proving the spiritual aspect
The spiritual.
with the intellectual or mental aspect?
Yes. I include spiritual aspect in the mental part of man, and it is the highest part of the mental of the man. Yes. The lady asks about the case of Asarum. What were the changes apart from these little changes? No. In the hydrophobinum case. Yeah. What were the changes in the hydrophobinum case? This is a very long story. If you see the file of this patient is so thick, and she was going through changes, through aggravations, and through changes that would every time give us the hint and the indication that they were doing, she was doing somewhat better. That was definite. Apart from the aggravation, we had the impression that she was getting better. But not to the extent that she would say, oh yes, now I feel well. It was after hydrophobinum which we heard for the first time that now I am well. Yes.
What's advice to recognize the survivor mind
I can't hear you well. Could you please?
How would you prevent a survivor using previous treatment that have been made for another person at the same type of not to rely on previous treatment on other persons. Individualized, how to prevent group of people.
Yeah. The question is, how do we prevent ourselves from giving a remedy in a case, in a similar case that we have seen before, and a particular remedy has worked? Is that correct? Just to be watchful of himself. Yes?
Is it harmful or detrimental chiropractic treatments while you're being prescribed?
No, it won't be detrimental, and I have no experience with the two together, how they go. So I'm not able to speak for in this case. Acupuncture is the same thing that with acupuncture. I do not know how. I would like to find out how they go together, but I do not know. After the question is what instructions we give the patient after we have given a remedy. The first thing that the patient must avoid is coffee, because coffee, it's caffeine actually. It's something that we use daily, and we can take large doses of that. So caffeine can interfere with the action of all remedies, of all homeopathic remedies, and in my experience I have found that it antidotes all cases, but it takes different time in antidoting it. When one case will antidote within 1 week drinking coffee, in another case would antidote after 9 months of drinking coffee. But it will definitely antidote the case, because we have made the experiments and we know that after we have stopped, we made sure that the patient did not take any more coffee, then the result was permanent. Another factor that can interfere with homeopathic remedies are all the allopathic drugs. All allopathic drugs. I would exclude aspirin, and I believe that if aspirin is taken in great quantities, like 10 aspirins a day, would also antidote homeopathic remedy. But taking an aspirin from time to time, it doesn't do any harm to the homeopathic treatment. And actually, sometimes we prefer for little ailment to say take an aspirin instead of prescribing a remedy. Another factor that we have found that antidotes the remedies is the camphor. I don't know, and I cannot give you an explanation why camphor is antidoting the remedies. But it is coming from the old masters. It's an information which comes from the old masters, and we have to respect it. And yet camphor, it's very easy to avoid, because it's not something which everybody uses in everyday life. Yeah, the cell salts can have an effect on the health of the individual. They can produce a cure many times when they are indicated and when the potency is enough to reach to the level of the disturbance. But taking too many of them, I'm afraid that it may interfere with the case, and it may create a little bit of confusion. Decaffeinated coffee you can drink. We have allowed people in Greece to drink decaffeinated coffee, and we have found that it doesn't antidote the remedies. The dental treatment, if it is, if a medicine is given, a drug is given, either injection to anesthesia injection or other drugs, antidote the homeopathic treatment, antidotes. Fluoride, with fluorization of the water, you mean?
No,
Oh, I have found in my experience that certain of the remedies are antidoted by fluoride, which is contained in the dental cream. Black tea is not a usual beverage in Athens, in Greece, and we do not have the experience of those who they drink 10 cups of tea. Well, this is the experience of the English people. So I cannot give you reliable information about the tea, but the tea that we allow them to drink, I mean the amount of tea that we allow our patients to drink is not antidoting the treatment. What? Yeah. Yeah, there are no methods, there are the facts. When a patient comes back and says, I have a relapse, then we investigate what he has been doing all this time, and if we suspect that a particular drug that he is taking, or a dental cream or something is antidoting, then we stop that, we repeat the remedy, and then if we see that it stabilizes, that means then we know that this particular drug was antidoting the case. By what? Yes, this is a good question. A case can be confused by drinking coffee, because coffee will not bring about many times a complete relapse, will bring a partial relapse. And in this case, you repeat the remedy and you see that it does not work. And then you have to wait for a complete relapse. You have actually to tell the patient to keep on drinking coffee until there is a complete relapse, and bring him back to the original state where he was when he first got the remedy. Yes?
What's the effect of the fact that you're continually getting close to the ability? That effect
there is an effect on the practitioner who is handling the remedies. We do not have that experience actually, because we have homeopathic pharmacists which are doing the dispensing of the remedy. Yes?
I believe maybe I'm mistaken, but I thought I saw what looked like a different expression of a bladder infection after giving antihistamines 30 days. Something later, you saw what looked like something higher up in the urinary tract. The question is, can homeopathic actually cause symptoms expression? How do you explain how that happens in terms of vital force?
Yeah, this is a good question. The gentleman asked whether the homeopathic remedy can produce a suppression, and how does that happen? How can you explain that? Yes, the homeopathic remedy can produce a suppression, and the explanation is that the remedy is close enough to the case. It's quite close, but not the simillimum. And therefore, it acts on certain symptoms. The difference is that these kind of suppressions do not last long, because here we actually have what we call a proving of a remedy. This person is sensitive to the remedy, quite sensitive. He could have a proving, the remedy could be proved on him, and that's why the remedy has a partial effect on him and suppresses 1, 2, or 3 symptoms. This suppression is easily reversible. That means after a while, we see, even if we don't give any other remedy, that the symptoms will reappear. The trouble is if we enter and we give another remedy which is wrong, and then we enter again and we give another third remedy and a fourth remedy, and then we mess up the case. Yes. I'm not familiar with polarity therapy, and I don't know whether it can antidote homeopathic treatment. Yes? Yeah, we don't use vitamins. We have not seen the need of using vitamins so far, and we have no experience in having vitamins together with the medicine. Yes? The lady asks whether there is any difference if we give 3 remedies or 1 remedy. 3 times. 3 times. Yes, this is a question that cannot be completely answered, what is better, but logic would say that one dose is better than 3, because the moment that we give the dose, a process of reaction starts in the organism. So already after 5 hours, we have another picture. So when we give another remedy, another dose at that moment, we are prescribing a remedy for a situation which has changed already. It's not the original. So it's more logical to just give 1 dose and wait, see what it does. Yes.
We would qualify coffee, decaffeinated coffee acid form. Is it the coffee or the caffeine? And if the person is treated homeopathically, what is that giving them?
Did you understand the question? Yeah, but we said that caffeine definitely antidotes the remedy. Aspirin is not antidoting the remedy. Decaffeinated coffee is not antidoting the remedies. It's caffeine is the problem, yeah. I couldn't understand. Usually we don't require for the patient to stop the coffee for a certain days before we can take his case. We just tell him to stop the remedy, to stop taking coffee after he has taken the remedy. It depends. On these cases, we shall talk later on the complicated cases. I'm sorry, the time is very late. Thank you very much. I think that we have covered a few topics on homeopathy, but I am not sure that I might have given you the right perspective of what homeopathy is. I'm not sure that you may understand the implications of homeopathy in our daily life, in our family life, in our social life, in our nation life. Homeopathy is such a deep and dynamic tool that can really bring about a true revolution, the most peaceful revolution that the world has witnessed so far. And I say that because we have seen cases walked in and walked out and attended them for years, and we have watched the changes in their lives. People who they had tremendous problems with their interrelationship with their family, problems in their work, and all these problems that were generated by a disease process in them were all settled down, and their life blossomed. Homeopathy, according to my understanding, is the highest form of therapy, because it can really free the person from the chronic diseases which have befallen upon the human race. You can never imagine the gratitude of the people when they come back after a right homeopathic treatment. And it is that in this way that a homeopath can exist and can live. Really, this is his food. It's not what he gets paid. I'll just disclose to you something which is, I don't know how much you can evaluate that. But with Dr. Irene Bachas, with whom I worked in the first years, we used to treat people without any payment at all for 2 or 3 years. I was working as a civil engineer the mornings, and I was earning money, and in the evenings we would treat people without getting any payment. But I can really assure you that these were the most fruitful years in my life. The time where I got the most enjoyment. By this time, of course, I didn't have the obligations, I didn't have the responsibilities which I have shouldered today. But there was such a thrill to have the patient back and explain the deep changes in him, and to see a marriage that was going to break down because the irritability of the woman was so great that it was not impossible to keep up the marriage. And then you will see the marriage continues. You would see persons that would say, I cannot keep up my job. I'm going to lose my job. because I cannot concentrate anymore. My thoughts are wandering. He's starting to get in psychotic. And then he does beautifully. He takes promotions. And within the society, what is the effect of such a deep change? I mean, can you imagine? Even people in the government, that they are under chronic diseases, they will take at a certain point a decision that a war is necessary. But that decision, we do not know how much is due to their chronic diseases, to the lack of calmness inside, and to the possibility to see things objectively. So homeopathy can really revolutionize our whole life. I am really sorry that I cannot show you in such a little time that we have the real effect of homeopathic medicine. How could I do it? I mean, I have done it with certain of the cases we have been treating from Athens and all that through correspondence, which is a very difficult thing to do still. And perhaps some of the people here, they have the experience of what is a right homeopathic treatment. But can you imagine what will happen if the whole world understands the implication and the possibilities that homeopathy has? Of course, I do not disagree with all other therapies, which are, they call the holistic movement therapies. But I do not know of any that can go as deep as bring down to another level the whole individual. But homeopathy, in order to be practiced properly, in order to be learned correctly, it needs a lot of understanding of the human being, a lot of understanding of the laws, which laws are universal, apply for every therapy. There is no therapy which I know of that can say, I shall ignore these laws. These laws, what we have just enumerated in a brief way, they are universal laws. And if the medical profession could undertake to investigate these laws, to investigate all these processes, and to see, to make tests, and to see the effect, I'm sure that a revolution in medicine will occur. So today, I'm going to speak mostly for the practitioners, for those who they know homeopathy and who have practiced it, who have seen the problems that homeopathy can present to them. And after we have taken a case, a homeopathic case, and after we have understood, in a homeopathic case we have to understand the distortions that have taken place in the whole individual, and also the degree of these distortions in those three levels. So the first thing we can point out is where the trouble really lies, whether it is on the mental, on the emotional, or on the physical. This is very important in order to have the possibility of a prognosis of the case. The deeper the center of gravity lies, the more difficult is the prognosis. And this is a process that has to be investigated. This is something that has to be taken out from the individual. The individual will not usually give you out all the information. I remember a case where one of our doctors in the clinic had called me in because he had a case of colitis, if I remember well. So the person, you must know that in our clinic there is a reputation that if a person takes too many drugs, allopathic drugs, we don't take the case. We shall tell, okay, go and stop the drugs and all that, and then you come back. So many people, they know that, and they won't tell us. So this man, he had come to be treated for a colitis. And the doctor, of course, asked him what he was taking for his colitis, what were the remedies. Was it cortisone, enema, or was these bismuth drugs and all that they're taking? And he said, oh, nothing. And he was investigating the case, but he was in confusion. He couldn't understand what was going on. And that's why he called me. He said, come in. So when I went and I saw the individual, by mere looking at him, I could see that the colitis was not the problem. The problem was absolutely on a deep mental level. So immediately, as I saw that, I said, sir, are you not taking any medicine? He said, no, not for colitis. I said, I don't ask about colitis. I asked whether you take any medicine. He says, oh yes, I'm taking some other medicine. I said, what? For what? And he came out, he pulled out about 5 or 6 heavy mental psychotic drugs that he was taking. He had come to be treated with a colitis, and the homeopath could have been misled to prescribe a remedy for his colitis without having understood the real problem of the patient. So all this information has to be taken away from the patient and be evaluated by the homeopathic prescriber. Many cases, you must be careful, many cases today are suffering on deeper levels, and they may be coming to be treated for a slight element, physical, but the actual trouble lies deeper on a mental level. Then you are going to have a lot of trouble with such cases. A person comes and says, I have palpitations. My heart is going very fast, and that's my problem. And you discover that there is a whole range of phobias. Fear of death, fear of passing out, fear of fainting, fear in a crowd, fear of being alone, a person whose whole life is controlled by fear. And she comes and says, I have palpitations. I remember another case like that the woman could not stay in the house by herself. She would have either to call continually somebody or go to her husband's office to be just together with him. Otherwise she could not exist. She could do nothing. She could perform no duty. The creation that she could put out in the world was nil. She was sick. She's very sick. Never mind the palpitations. But if you see a person that can perform, can create, do not afraid. So, in homeopathy we'll have a whole range of elements that we are treating with. And after we have taken the case, the next thing to decide is what is the indicated remedy. After we have settled on that also, we have an equal difficult question to answer. What should be the potency? The potency. Everybody knows what is a potency? Okay. So in such a case, we have to I just give you a few indications to have three main categories of patients on which we can vary, within which we can vary the potency. The first rule is that if you have a clear case, you go high. High means from 200 to cm. If you have a clear case which has deep physical pathology, like a heart that is not working properly, there is valve problems in the heart and all that. You have a liver which is destroyed, most of the liver. You have kidneys which have been destroyed. Even if you have a clear cut picture, you never go higher than 200. If you have an old man whose remedy is clear, but he is over 75 and he looks already quite frail, do not go over 200. 200. Repeat. If you have an old man whose remedy is clear, we're talking about the case now where the general case where the remedy is clear, but the man is old, do not go higher than 200. That means either 30, 12, 30, or 200, the highest that you can go. Also, when you have a clear picture, but the pathology is deep, the pathology in the physical body is deep, then you go up to 200. But if you have a mental case whose picture of the remedy is clear, you go as high as you like, CM. And this is where you have your best results. The question is, what is clear? Those who are practicing homeopathy and they know some materia medica, they know that the totality of the symptoms have to match with the totality of the symptoms of the remedy. So if you have a case where all the peculiarities of the case, all the peculiar symptoms, together with the general symptoms, together with the mental symptoms, are matching, have been produced by the remedy, then we say we have a clear picture. There are cases, few, not many today, that are clear. And these are cases, by the way, that they do not have a deep miasmatic background. You see, every miasm can produce all diseases, all known diseases, all miasm. One miasm, whatever you take, whether it is the syphilitic or the gonorrhea miasm or the psoric miasm or the tuberculous miasm or the cancerous miasm, it can produce all kinds of diseases. If in a person we have only one miasm, then what we see is that his remedy picture is clear, and usually there is an aggravation, of which we shall talk later on, and a permanent cure. And if this person does not do something to antidote his remedy, I mean his condition, he will not need another remedy for quite a few years. These are cases that should not be misunderstood as great attainments of homeopathy. And this is something that is not known. And they people think, if I have cured a case of cancer, I can always cure a case of cancer. And since I have cured 5 cases of cancer, I might as well say I can cure cancer. No, cancer can be produced by 2, 3, or 4, or 5 miasms. If we have all this background and we have cancer, it's not the same as if we have one miasm producing cancer. So even in a cancer case, you can see a remedy and you can cure it. But it doesn't mean that in every case cancer is the result of only one miasm. That is why, for instance, infantile diabetes, what's called juvenile diabetes, is not a result of one miasm. It is the result of 2, 3, 4 miasms. That's why a child gets such a serious disease in so early age. That's why a child can get cancer at the age of 12. When you see, that is why you get the schizophrenics, what's called this schizophrenia, which starts at the age of 16, 17, 18, hebephrenia. This is the result of many miasms. But you get a man who goes into a psychotic state at the age of 65. Then you see veratromarium, you give that and you cure him. And this is again a psychotic state. But it has taken very long before he has developed that. That means all along the organism was resisting it. And there you can have effect and you can have results. So it's a great thing to be able first to evaluate where you are standing with a case. So, the next question of potency comes with cases which are not clear. If you are not certain about a remedy, then you give low potencies, and I would suggest 30 or 200. Never higher. As long as the person is not in a deep pathology. If there is deep pathology, tissue changes, and the remedy is not clear, it is better if you prescribe very low potency, which is for us is the 12th potency, or the 6x sometimes. Now, in the previous case, you just prescribe one dose and wait, and we shall say later how much to wait. When it comes to cases which are not clear, which the pathology is deep, you are not sure, you prescribe, you may repeat the potency, you prescribe low potency, 12, say, and you may repeat the potency. How often you can repeat? You can repeat 3 times a day for 10, 15, or 20 days, as long as there is no change. But you have to warn the patient that if there is a change, either for better or worse, discontinue the remedy. There is another category of patients that we call sensitive patients. Now this is a big question. What is a sensitive? Who is a sensitive patient? To my experience, of course nobody so far has given any answer to that question. But to my experience are patients that they seem to have a nervous system which is tuned up 1 or 2 degrees higher than it usually should be. They are very nervous patients, very on the alert all the time, patients that you will find that are affected by chemicals very much, by feelings of the other people very much, by the surrounding, whatever it might be, and by taking the case, you will feel that this patient is an organ, is like an organ which is tuned to the limit. If you just push it a little bit further, it will break the cords. I mean, this idea is when you see a sensitive patient. This is the idea that you have. In such a case, it's advisable, first of all, never to tell the patient what is the remedy. And do never prescribe higher than 200 also. 30 is a good potency to start with. You start and you wait and see the effect. In such cases, patients will come back and they may give you symptoms of the remedy that we gave. And we shall explain later what that means. So to summarize, when you have deep pathology in the physical body, never go high. Deep pathology in the physical body, never go high. I have never seen in my life an accident with homeopathy. Kent, of course, talks about the dangers of giving all that. I have never seen an accident. But I have to relate you a case, one case. While I was in South Africa, I had a study group by that time, and in this study group there were a few medical doctors that are taking we were studying together, and they usually used to consult me about their cases. So there was a case of Natrum muriaticum. It was a clear-cut case of Natrum muriaticum. He was a man of 82. He had heart trouble. So I suggested Natrum muriaticum 200. The medical doctor, and fortunately he was a medical doctor, thought that since the remedy, the picture was very clear, she could go much higher. And without telling me anything, she prescribed a temen. A temen on a man who is 80 years old with heart trouble. I mean, it's not a wise thing to do. Of course, the man ended up in the hospital with a severe heart infraction. We do not know, of course, because of that case. There's one case. What is that? It doesn't show anything. I mean, we have to have statistics and all that. But still, we have to be careful. And it is better, before we have all the research that could be done upon these matters, we have to be careful and to be thoughtful. Because we are protecting homeopathy also through this thoughtfulness. Because if an accident happens, then it's homeopathy to be blamed. It can become a nationwide affair, you know. Somebody has died during homeopathic treatment. I mean, everybody dies under allopathic treatment. Yeah, but this is okay. This is accepted. He died under all scientific preventions. But with homeopathy, still, we have to be very careful. That is why the selection of potency is a great question that you have to be careful about. We shall, of course, talk about, there is another thing that can happen, of course, that once a person is very sick in the deeper levels. I had a case of a man, very strong businessman, who said to me, I have beaten everything in my life. I had a battle and I have beaten. I had been what's called a parachuter. I've fighted. I have done everything which is hard in life, but I cannot beat Valium. I have to take Valium 3 times a day in order to survive. And this is unacceptable for me. Why? Because he was going into tremendous fears, tremendous panics, he was very disturbed psychologically. He was very disturbed psychologically. So, he was very hard, of course. He was very skeptical when he came to homeopathy. He says, I have been to all doctors. He had access to all doctors all over the world. He was traveling all over the world. Had access here, because he's an American citizen also, had access to the best clinics, to the best doctors. He was going so frequently to the doctor that one of his doctors said, listen man, you are a busy man and I'm a busy man. So, why don't we make another arrangement if you want to come here and consult me? I have nothing to offer you. So you just send me a check every week and I'll go to the bank to cash it. Because that's all I can do for you. Don't come back. Well, this man now, he had a tremendous fear of his heart and all that his heart will have a heart infarct and things like that. And by seeing this patient, I could see that the heart was not in good condition. The circulatory system was not in good condition. I prescribed the Kali arsenicum for him, just tell you. And he started doing beautifully. Of course, in the beginning he came, he says, after a month, I don't know if I'm better, but since you told me to try to reduce volume, I have been taking only a few volumes during that period. I don't know if I need it or not and things like that. Next month he came and said he has taken only once or twice volume, and the third month he says is the first time after 10 years that I can live without volume. His blood pressure used to be very low also. This blood pressure came up to the normal and all that. And he was very thankful, and a year elapsed. There was no trouble with him. But I knew that he could really have trouble. And the trouble came. Once this inner, the deeper disease went into the physical body, he he had a heart infarct. This is something we cannot avoid, unfortunately. Said to him, lie here, don't move at all. Yeah. So he went through. I mean, he stayed in the hospital for a few days. He made a battle. He didn't want any medicine to take during the hospital. He called me in the hospital. There was a big fight in the hospital and all that about the whole story. And he went out of that. Eventually, he developed a colitis, which he had years ago. And now he's invited me to, he stays in New York. I might be going and staying in his house just to get over the jet lag, which was tremendous. And I might stay in his house for 2 days. Okay? So, it is not the potency here that created the heart infarct. You see the difference? It is not during the aggravation stage that we are afraid that a heart condition is not proper, and we should not give a high potency. With a heart, with a heart condition under the heart infra, you don't go and give a 10M. And this is something, unfortunately, which is not known, which is not understood by many homeopaths. And good homeopaths, because they are Kentians, they are followers of the right homeopathy. But these are mistakes that can be sometimes fatal. I have not seen something which is fatal so far. And I have seen more than 30,000 cases. It is because I see cases of 20 doctors. They come to me. I don't have seen them personally. But there are cases which all the doctors of the clinic, they bring to me, and I can see and can prescribe. So, I think the matter of potency is quite clear. Does anyone have any question about potency? Yes. What potency do we prescribe for children? Children that they get usually acute elements. For children that have acute elements, we can prescribe high potencies, as high as we like. 10M is the usual potency, 50M or CM. And never mind how serious it is, the trouble. I remember a case of bronchial pneumonia of a child of 4 or 5 years old that one of the doctors came and said, we have a case of bronchial pneumonia. It had been diagnosed. That was through telephone, the information. The pediatrician had gone to see the child. He said, the child has bronchial pneumonia. He has to take all these antibiotics, get some oxygen for the night, because the child may go into dyspnea, and be ready to take it to the ambulance in case you see an aggravation. So all this information will be given by the doctor together with homeopathic symptomatology of the case. And that was a clear picture of phosphorus. So in the beginning I always inclined to say, well, let him take antibiotics. But the doctor insisted, no, this is a child, we must not. He said, we prescribe a remedy and we wait until tomorrow. I mean, a pneumonia can wait until tomorrow. Okay. I said, okay, give a dose of phosphorus 10 That was about 1 o'clock in the noontime. At 6 o'clock in the evening, the doctor came almost in tears to tell me that the child was up and was playing. So never mind how serious it is, the disease. There is a child who has an acute element. Give very high potency. But of course, if you get a child that is very, very sick, chronically, if there is deep pathology, do not go high, even in the child. Give to 200. Go to 200. I'm sorry. Yes. Do I have to repeat the question? Yeah? Repeat. Yeah, okay. The question is whether going from mental to physical. I mean, progressing, we have a cure, we witness a cure from mental to physical. Can this ever be fatal? You see, from my, what I have seen, what is my experiences, is not fatal. But we can assume logically that if we don't follow up the case correctly at the second stage, it can be fatal. I just relate to another case of a doctor. He is a doctor. He was a doctor. He had a duodenal ulcer. And we prescribed for him phosphorus 10 m. And the man was working in the morning in a hospital for tuberculosis. The doctor who took his case, of course I had prescribed the remedy, but I had not the information that this man, at the young age, he had tuberculosis. So, he had tuberculosis and he was working on the hospital for tuberculosis patients. So, we prescribed phosphorus, he had a beautiful reaction, the mental symptoms, he had a lot of fears and phobias and anxieties, a lot of symptoms, all the symptoms subsided, the ulcer subsided, the ulcer subsided. And what happened? He had a son whom he loved very much. So there was some visual disturbance in the son. He takes the son to the ophthalmologist. The ophthalmologist looks at the son and he says, "Man, I'm afraid there is a very serious disease on your son and he may lose his eyesight." That tear him into pieces, and for 15 days he was in agony. That brought down his level of resistance. He was working in a tuberculosis wards. He had tuberculosis, and then we witnessed tuberculosis came in this patient. So he understood immediately the symptoms, what it was. He made an X-ray, and on the upper apex of the left lung there was quite what's called cavern. Cavern. He was one of the doctors that was very, new to homeopathy, new to our school. And when he saw tuberculosis, he said, "No, homeopathy, it's good for my ulcer, but I don't know how good it can be for my tuberculosis." So he decided himself to take the treatment he was giving to his patients. After, I think, 1 month or 1.5 months of allopathic treatment, taking the usual drugs, he came back in a terrible mental condition. Yes, mentally I am as bad as ever, I'm much worse, and he had all kinds of anxieties, phobias. He was a wreck mentally. The cavern had reduced to half of its size. So I took his case, and it was a case of sulfur. So the book says when you have an actual tuberculosis going on, do not give sulfur. But I like to break the rules many times to find out, and I'm prepared to take the consequences of course, of that breaking of the rules. So I prescribed sulfur 30. The result was miraculous. Not only cleared up psychologically the case, but it has taken 1.5 months to reduce the cavern to half its size. And within 10 days, that had remained a very minute spot that you could hardly see. And the whole vitality was back, and of course the doctor is working with us today, is in our clinic. So what we could discern from that, after that, there was a tuberculosis that can come back, sure enough, and we can bring back all the conditions that have existed, but only on the condition that, as I showed you the other day, the men, why? The man was here, on the sea level. He had the anxieties and fears and all that together with the ulcer. He was working while he was here, was working on a tubercular wards, and he was not affected. Still during this time, he was working for 2 years in the wards here. In this time, sure enough, he had strains, he had nights where he didn't sleep, he was on duty, his vitality was low, but he was not getting the tuberculosis. Once phosphorus was prescribed, it took him to that level. And this level is amenable, is susceptible to tuberculosis. Then, all along, he was ready to get tuberculosis. But if he kept his level of health on that level, he would not get tuberculosis, because tuberculosis in big group you can get once you pass over this threshold here, within this range. So once the strain of what the doctor told him minimized his health on B level, then he became exposed to tuberculosis immediately. And of course, this man knew already some homeopathy, and he immediately said, "Oh, has this anything to do with phosphorus, And phosphorus has brought back my tuberculosis and all that." And at the moment, he was very upset. And we had to admit that, yes, it might be the case. He did not know, of course, all the details about it. Neither he had told us at the moment that this was brought about by the great stress that he had hearing about his child.
Yesterday you said that if a physical symptom comes back after you've given a constitutional case on the basis of mental, especially, then you wait. Can you talk about wait? Can you talk about making the judgments between when you wait and when you treat that physical symptom?
Yeah. This is the next subject.
He wants to wait to talk about that. He wants to talk about questions of potency. In this dose of sulfur, you get 1 dose of a 30, right?
Yeah, in this case, I just prescribed 1 dose of 30, sulfur 30, 1 dose. We are talking about only now questions on potency, and then we close that, eh? So don't mix the, Steve, who is the...
Okay, you said earlier that prescribed pathology prescribed lower doses only up to 200.
Where it is deep, the pathology.
Not, you said that if it's not too deep, but it's not clear.
It's unclear, yeah.
Only up to 200. Why is that? What would happen if you prescribe a higher dose?
Yeah, that's a good question. It is, you see, if you go lower and lower in potency, actually you don't have, you may have an effect, a better effect, than giving a high potency once the resonance is not exactly. The idea is that if you give a drug on a physical, on a mother tincture, you will definitely get an effect on the body, whatever is that man. Once you start potencies, you have in order to have an effect, to be more and more resonating to the field of the patient in order to have an effect. So, if you give a high potency on a person who is near, whom you are not certain you are giving the right remedy, you may have two things. First is that a high potency can create, if it is close enough but not exactly, because this is our case, can create a proven picture for much longer time than a 30 potency. So you have been mixing the case, and you will be mixing it for a longer period by a 10M or 50M. Once it is close enough, but not what it should be. A third potency, it is a test potency, where we'll show you if it is the right one, we'll have a good reaction, we'll say what is a good reaction, and then you can go to 200, 1M, etc., until you reach the 10M potency that will clear really the case. Yeah, going back there. Yeah. For a sense, sensitive. Yeah. A sensitive person is one, as we said, that has a nervous system, and the remedy is acting, the medium through which the medicine is acting on the body is the nervous system. Has a nervous system which is tuned up very highly. So, if the remedy is the correct one, you may get a tremendous aggravation in such a patient. If it is not the correct one, and you give in a sensitive person a very high potency, then you may be proving the same as we said before. You may be proving for a long time. You may establishing a proving in that person for a long time. So it's not wise to do that. Yes. We shall talk, I think, immediately after that. It is on the schedule to talk about homeopathic aggravations, and then we will talk. Just potency.
Jack.
Jack.
When you're going to repeat the same remedy, in what situations will you give the same potency? In what situations will you give a higher potency? Whenever will you go to a lower potency?
Could you explain to me?
When after the remedy has worked, then when do you, if it's relapsed, then when do you, if you're going to repeat the remedy, when do you give it the same, when do you go higher, when would you go lower?
Yeah. This subject, it is on the schedule to cover it, because it is a second prescription.
Follow-up prescription.
Follow-up prescription. So, just initial potency. Just question on initial potency. Epilepsy.
Epilepsy.
Yeah. Yes. The question is good. It's a good example that we can take. Epilepsy could be of different types. There's epilepsy which comes once in 6 months. I mean, the epileptic has a seizure once in 6 months. The person is quite composed in his mental state, and you could see he can converse and can be quite healthy in mental and emotional level. But you get another epileptic whose seizures will come 3 or 4 times a day, who is in a hazy state of mind, and who is almost impossible to cope with life. These are different cases of epilepsy that you have to differentiate, and in the first case you can go high and you do not consider it as a deep pathology. In the second case you consider it as a deep pathology.
I was wondering about doses for teenagers. Would it be more like children's doses or more like adult
adolescents and teenagers? Do you give the same potency you apply? When do you change? At what stage of maturity does you think of people as adults in terms of potency?
Oh yeah, I would, when I say old people, I mean over 70. Over 70. From up to that age, once we have not a good deep pathology, we can give a high potency to everybody up to that age. But after 70, we have to be careful on our potency and to be low.
Clarify this last point that James made. Is it true that it doesn't really, is it also true that it doesn't matter what the physical pathology is? If there's also a deep mental pathology, then you want to be careful?
If there is deep mental pathology, when we say mental pathology, we don't mean a tumor of the brain. We have to differentiate. You may have a mental picture coming out of a tumor of the brain.
It means what? If you have a mental picture and you have tissue changes as well, a deep mental case, and you have tissue changes, what do you base your prescription on in that case?
Then you have to go low, and I mean not higher than 200.
Even if the tissue change itself is not that pathological?
If the tissue changes are not too pathological, you can go high. If there are deep mental symptomatology, I mean severe mental symptoms, at the same time pathology on the body, which is unusual, which is something unusual, then you have to be careful and be up to high, up to 200.
So you graded on how much the change is disturbing?
Yeah, how much pathology in the physical body. That is what controls the potency. Pathology on the physical body. If you don't have pathology on the physical body, the man who is suffering with all these troubles, he has done an electroencephalogram, and there is no tumor found there, and he has deep mental symptoms, you can go very high, as long as the picture is clear.
You grade the tissue change, you grade your prescription, your potency, on how deeply the tissue changes affect the function of the organism?
Yes.
So a mild ulcer, you might go higher than you would with ulcerative colitis with a lot of dangerous symptoms.
Yeah. Yes.
It's the same thing. The question is, it's the same thing that you apply to epilepsy to other diseases which are not necessarily...
Yes, exactly. You may have a liver disturbance, and in the liver, I mean, you do the liver examinations, and you found slight disturbances on the liver. In deep mental, you can go high. But if you see that the liver is really affected, and there are mental symptoms, you don't go high. Is it clear? Not yet. I only used once in a case of ichthyosis.
Yeah.
You know that? Where I took the patient in a series of potencies from 200 up to 3 mm. That was the potency that we received from Nelson's of London. Yeah. That's the only time where I've gone beyond. I needed to go beyond the CM.
We should go on.
Yeah, okay. In 20 minutes. We take a break? Okay, I'll travel to cover.
Sure.
To cover as much as I can. You see, if I had energy enough, and if you were willing, I would be willing to do it from morning till night. But standing for 6 hours here depletes completely my possibility of staying longer. But we shall see if it's necessary, and if you want, we may stay longer in case we cannot cover all the subjects. I don't think that my energy can flow if I sit down. My energy will sit also, so. But I shall sit sometimes when we have the question answer. Bill is not here, eh? Bill is not here yet. Yeah. So I would like I would like now to talk to you about the homeopathic aggravations. This is a very disputed subject, and a subject on which we have the greatest controversies and the greatest misunderstandings. So I shall cover it as soon as possible. So, the first question is, shall we always witness an aggravation? According to the laws of similars and according to logic, since we are stimulating the vital force to produce further, to enhance the symptoms, theoretically, we should say that we should have an aggravation in every case. This is not so. Why? Because when we do not have deep pathology, no deep pathology, symptoms are functional. Symptoms appear because of functional disturbances in the body. Such symptoms, when the patient comes, usually are at their peak. Because once they start, the patient goes along with that. He doesn't consult a doctor and all that. And then he starts consulting the first, the second, the third, until he reaches the homeopath. Because never a patient goes straight to a homeopath. After he has been all over the places, then he comes to a homeopath. So, by the time he comes, the pathology is functional, but his symptomatology is at its peak. He's really suffering with that symptomatology. So, if we find that patient at this peak state, where he's suffering mostly, and we prescribe a remedy, we shall not witness an aggravation. Because what the defense mechanism has done so far is to try to get rid of the disorder by enhancing symptoms. So we get him at the point where his symptoms are highest. We just give the homeopathic remedy which just makes the symptom a little bit more, but not noticeable to the patient. That's why the patient will come back and will say, I took the remedy, and next day, from the next day, or the same even day, I'm better. Even he has been suffering for 5 years. It is because we touch that patient at the moment of the aggravation, which is at the moment that the symptoms are in their peak. But if the same patient had come during a time where his symptoms have subsided, because these functional symptoms, they do not remain very steadily all the time. There are periods where they are low, a low ebb. Then even in such functional disturbances, we shall witness an aggravation, and then the patient usually will say, I had a headache the worst headache that I had in the last 5 years, for instance. But if he had come at the point where his headaches are on the crisis and we prescribe the remedy, he does not notice an aggravation. So the second case is when we have pathology not deep. In this case, we shall definitely witness an aggravation. The third case is when we have deep pathology. Here, in this case, we shall have a big aggravation and perhaps an aggravation during which we have to enter with another remedy. The aggravations of patients with deep pathology are so great. I mean, you get, for instance, an ulcerative colitis, which is for 12 years standing, and you give your remedy, like a podium, and there is just 12 stools a day full of blood for how long? I won't say, because I just want to make you think, you know. How long a patient with 12 stools a day, with lots of blood, can survive? He will have anemia very soon. His energy will be depleted. He cannot take any food. So how long are you going to leave that aggravation? So these are the most difficult cases to handle with. And once you see that, you wait. There you have to have the knowledge of pathology. And you have to wait as long as you see the patient is surviving. But once you see that there is a turning point where he's collapsing, then you have to enter definitely with another remedy. But I have found in my experience that during this type of aggravations, if you watch closely enough, there is a possibility that you will see another remedy quite clearly. A second remedy, which you must give. Then, do not wait for a month or 2 or 3. So the rule is, once you see the picture, and once you see the aggravation, if it is big, the pathology is deep, and you see the remedy, give it, even if it is 2 days after the first prescription. Even 2 days after the first prescription, you must enter, and then you control the aggravations. I believe that this was something that Kant perhaps did not follow so well. That's why he said that if you give a remedy and a deep pathology, you may have your patient died. We have severe cases, we have seen severe aggravations, and we have seen that these cases have taken further by entering in time with another remedy. When it is in time, as soon as we have the picture of a remedy, we watch. That means, of course, that we should know materia medica. Because the idea of what is a clear image is different between an individual and another, depending on the knowledge he has on materia medica. Here, of course, the things are not as simple as I just present them, because it's not possible to cover all subjects and all possible possibilities. And the thing is how long to wait. Here, in these cases, how long to wait with an aggravation. Here, in these cases, there should not be a long aggravation. If you see a long aggravation, then suspect that you have given the wrong remedy, and that the remedy did nothing. And the pathology and the condition of the patient just continues. And because some of the patient and some of the homeopaths think that there might be an aggravation, they tell the patient, okay, this is an aggravation, wait, and waits 1 month or 2 months. It's not necessary to wait 3 or 4 months in a case like that, where you see the continuation of symptoms, just the continuation of the same symptoms, and you may say this is an aggravation. There cannot be an aggravation. There, the reaction should be immediate aggravation within, when we say immediate, within the first 4 days. From a few hours to 4 days. An aggravation, which is going to last from a few hours to a few days. That means for 4 hours to 4 days. And then you see amelioration. If you don't see that, do not think that this is an aggravation, let us wait. I mean, it's a waste of time. Just a moment. Where here, where the pathology is deeper, you can expect to have longer aggravation, and you can expect that the aggravation will start after a few days. In these cases, you can see an aggravation starting after 5 days, after 10 days. We have seen aggravation starting after 20 days. It takes so long for after the stimulation with the homeopathic remedy to have an aggravation, to have a reaction. Here, in deep pathology, we usually see aggravations quite soon. That means within 3, 4, 5 days, the aggravation starts. The aggravation is very severe. The life of the patient is threatened. You have to enter again immediately with the best possible remedy that you can find at the moment. And here is where novice homeopaths should not interfere with these cases, because they do not know enough materia medica to understand immediately the picture which is coming immediately. The picture may be absolutely there and clear, and if he has not the knowledge to recognize it, he will say, oh, I don't know yet. Or he doesn't know pathology, yes.
So should you always tell the patient to expect an aggravation?
Yeah, that's a good question. To my experience, I'll tell you what I have been doing with the patients. That if I see a patient who is suffering in the physical mostly, on the physical body, I may tell him that we may expect an aggravation. But if I see a patient who is suffering on the mental level, on the emotional level, it is no good to tell them about any aggravation at all. Let's see what happens, and if it happens, then you may explain. I remember a case where it was a family of psychotics, all of them. Yeah, the father was in the insane asylum, the mother was in the insane asylum, the biggest brother was in the insane asylum, and there were left two of these brothers, they were left out. So I took the case of the one, and I told him that he might have an aggravation. He called me a few days after, outside from a train station. He had to take the train to go somewhere from his work, and he called me, and he says in a trembling voice, I just remember, should I take the train to go, or I'm going to have an aggravation inside the train, or what's going to happen to me, you know? And when I saw him back again, he said that the first time that he took the remedy, he went and lied in bed and was waiting for the aggravation to happen. Yeah. Once you have such experiences, then you know to whom you may say that there might be an aggravation. Also, during the process of treatment, you may have back symptoms, and if you have a person who had gonorrhea, and you are quite certain about his remedy, and you are quite certain that he may have a discharge again back, then you tell him that if that happens, do not go and treat it with an allopath, or continue to have sexual intercourse with his wife because he may just infect her, and you just prevent that. And this is good to say, because once the people, they get back their discharge from the gonorrhea, then they are happy. If you don't tell them and they get it, and you tell them later on, you are in trouble, you see. I'll just remember another story with a woman who had come with chronic headaches to be treated, and we prescribed the remedy, and she came after a few months, I think, 4 or 5 months, I don't remember, and she said to us that she said, I had come with my headaches, and my headaches were all right, but now they are back. Why? Because I had an abortion, voluntary abortion. She didn't want the child. And after this operation, the abortion had come. She said to us, you know, I have been with my husband for 10, 15 years, and we never took precautions, and I never had a problem. She didn't want a child, she didn't take precautions, and this was all right for her. So she said, I think that by giving me that remedy, I could have a child, and you should have told me that. How could we imagine, you know? She was sterile, she became, she came to a normal state that a woman should be, and then she came there to sue us, you know, because we didn't tell her that this sphere could also be regulated. So of course many times you don't know what to say and what not to say to a patient, but the general rule is, say to them, if you see pathology, warn them mildly, Do not say if you see a hypochondriasis, if you see much mental anxiety in persons like nitric acid, never tell to a nitric acid that he is going to have, never tell to a phosphorus that has mental symptomatology, never tell to a kali arsenicum, and to lycopodium. These are remedies which are having great anxiety about their health, and they cannot handle it. Not to every lycopodium, but to a lycopodium that has mental problems. Yes, yes. We have not covered the whole subject. I'm sorry, but it would take 3 hours before we could have covered it, but we shall answer some questions now.
Am I proper to assume that a recurring gonorrhea discharges contagious?
Yeah, that is a question, a good question. Usually, yeah, whether the gonorrhea discharge that was originally there and came back, it is contagious or not. Yes, it is contagious, but usually when there is a culture made, culture, yes. Culture, they say, yes. I always forget the word. They usually do not find the gonococcus, but staphylococcus. And that's interesting to know. It's not the gonococcus which comes back. It comes back in the form of staphylococcal infection.
Take a break. Let's take a 5-minute break. Everybody, I'd like everybody to stay in there around the chairs.
How are you doing? The next question that we shall take is after we have prescribed the first remedy, what do we usually say to the patient? In our practice, that in which we see chronic cases mostly, we schedule next visit after a month. So this is the time when a homeopath feels very much, how can I say, anxious. Eventually, I got into the habit of understanding whether a patient is doing better or is the same just by seeing him entering into the room. There is a different kind of air when a person has done well on a homeopathic remedy. There is something which his whole being is telling you that I am better. And this is, of course, a very nice thing to see from the very beginning. But it is not something which happens all the time. And this is where we find most of our problems. When the patient sits down and you ask him how he feels, and he says, I'm pretty the same. There is no much I have noticed. This is a question that has to be very, an answer which has to be very well evaluated. Otherwise, we are going to make mistakes. I'll just give you an example of what I mean. I remember a case with a severe skin eruption on the whole body, that she came after a month and said, I am the same. And we saw that she was the same. There was no aggravation that she could think of, or we could see. As we had taken the case, we went symptom by symptom, one by one, to see whether there was a change. Do you still feel cold? Yes, I'm cold. Do you still have craving for sweets? Yes, I still have craving for sweets. Do you still have this and that? Yes. When we reached to the symptom of irritability, he hesitated a bit. She was a patient that we call a closed-up patient. You could see she was not forward, and she was not giving information by herself. So even that hesitation that she had to answer that question, are you still as irritable? She said, maybe I'm a bit better in that because I didn't fight with my husband when we had a fight, and maybe I'm a bit better, but nothing much. On the strength only of this information, of this little information, we waited. And she came the second month. And she says, of course we gave placebo, she said, I'm still the same. There's no change. No change, no change. We went through again the whole symptomatology as we had taken in the beginning. There was no change. But now, she would admit definitely that she was better from irritability. She was not so irritated anymore. So the prescription was again placebo. And she comes the third month, and she's laughing. We could see her skin already. It was the summertime, we could see the skin. We could see she was better. And she said, that remedy which you gave me finally did the job. So it was the third month that we saw an effect on the skin which we were interested, or she was interested. And one can see how important it is to evaluate correctly the information of the patient. Especially if the patient gives information about his inner self which shows an improvement. Do never hesitate to give placebo or to wait if you see that the inner part of man is getting better. In such cases, you have to be very controlled and not being misled by the patient, because the patient always is anxious What are you going to do? You have to do something about my case. I'm not getting better. Do not get sentimentally involved with the patient. A homeopath should look very objectively at the case, should be able to look objectively. Never mind what the patient says, whether he praises him or he insults him. He has to be objective and evaluate every time the information the patient is given for the good of the patient. There is another type of patient that will tell you that by the end of the month that I am worse. I'm worse, I'm the same, I'm worse, nothing has happened. In such cases, if they mention the word worse, I'm worse, and they are definite about it, and after a month they will report worse, then be suspicious and ask whether the last week, aren't they getting better at all, perhaps? Because we may have a 20 days aggravation, and the last week just starting to getting better. You will find many cases that if you ask them about the last week, what has happened in the last week, that they will tell you, oh yes, the last week I start feeling better. And of course, you know what is the prescription in such a time. There are other cases that they won't admit, they will not admit any changes, but they will say, on top of this, I have this symptom. On top of what I had, I have now this. What is this new symptom? If that new symptom is a mental symptom, then we have to evaluate, then we have to judge whether this new mental symptom is in hierarchy on a lower level than perhaps a previous one. And we have to go all along the case and ask about every symptom that he had before. And then you may find out that there was one symptom that was relieved and another symptom replacing it. She had depressions, and she is now complaining about irritability. That is a better state. All other symptoms have remained the same, but you see this grading of mental symptom which is going towards the periphery. Do not change the remedy. Of course, there are severe cases that they suffer with suicidal depression. The next symptom that they will develop will be anxiety or irritability, but of a great order and very disturbing. And you may be tempted to give a remedy. And perhaps you have to give a remedy, otherwise the man will kill his wife from the expression of this irritability. And if you see that it is so strong and so big that it may cause some trouble, then you may, by taking the new case, the new picture, find that there is a possibility for that remedy, and you may prescribe it. But it is better if you can leave it alone and the patient, and help the patient, talk to the patient, explain to the patient what is going on. And the patient, most of the time, will understand and will go with you and will take up this irritability and will try to control itself as much as he can. It is very, it is many times very easy to spoil cases in this way. I spoiled the case of a doctor, this was a doctor himself, also an NMD, who was suffering with tremendous phobias and anxieties and depressions. And we prescribed for him phosphoric acid in the beginning, and then Aurum. And he was doing quite well. But as he was a doctor and he had access to me and he was coming every day and to see me and he would relate his symptoms, at a certain stage persuaded me that he was not feeling so well and he was pressing me for a remedy. I knew, I had seen his sister and I had given Medorinum to her. And Medorinum had worked. And I could see a few, one or two symptoms of Medorinum coming up for him. So I thought that it would be a good chance to give him Medorinum and to progress further with the case. The result was that I made the whole case relapse. And till that day, I cannot manage to bring it back to the state where he was before the Medorinum. Even I had two symptoms of Medorinum. I knew that Medorinum was in the family because of his sister. Yet the picture of Medorinum was not complete, and I was in a hurry to prescribe it. As a result, it was closed, the Medorinum. What happened? Disrupted the case, brought back the phobias, the anxieties. I mean, he's enclosing himself in just in his room. He cannot go out. He has to go in the center of Athens with his wife. He's in a terrible state. And he was doing beautifully. And I was teaching him, because he was one of the students of the school. And I said, okay, now you see what has happened. That we have made a mistake. And you know why the mistake is? Because I gave up in your demanding, give a remedy. Give me a remedy, I'm not well. Do not give, evaluate the case. If the patient is doing fine and you don't have a clear picture, the next clear picture, do not take chances. You will spoil the cases. Of course, apart from these failures, we have the cases where they walk in and they just relate to you the beautiful changes that have happened in them, and how well they feel and all that. And these people, they usually forget to mention the initial aggravation. If you want to keep really statistical data of how many people they really have an aggravation, then you have to go back, you have to ask the people how did they feel the first, the second, the third day. And only if you have a full report of the patient on the second visit, you can really know what the remedy has done for him. And you can really evaluate the effect on the case. Also, as you all know, the reaction of the person would show us how deep he is sick, whether he is deeply sick or whether he is superficially sick. A short and strong reaction with an amelioration, it's a very good prognostic. Cases that they report, instead of reporting a symptom which has gone down in hierarchy, they report that they are the same, but a discharge has been established, either from the nose or from the vagina, or there is a change in the flow of menses. In such cases, even if they don't admit any change, do not change the remedy. Wait, because that discharge, whether it is perspiration, whether it is leukorrhea, whether it is mucus, that discharge is showing that the defense mechanism has been stimulated and is doing the work. The patient will be dissatisfied, that is sure. But it is better to lose the patient and tell, no, I'm not going to stop your symptoms. And the thing that you have to remember always, that a homeopath never promises, at least I myself never promise to anybody that I can cure him. We do not know, really, unless we have seen the drug acting, we do not know whether the remedy is right. So how can we promise? Sometimes also we are misled in our estimation of the pathology of the person. We see cases where we think, oh, that is easy, it's simple and all that, and yet the pathology is deep and we have been misled. Even if you are good allopathic doctors, you could make mistakes definitely on the diagnosis, on the pathology. Another thing, for instance, I would like to give you another example on the follow-up of a visit where a lady had come for anxieties, for mental treatment, and on the third visit, she developed a tumor on the breast. She went to a specialist, to a cancer specialist in Athens, who wrote a diagnosis that was cancer. So the lady came again back to us and said, here is the diagnosis, I have cancer and I have to go to London to be operated. What do you think and what can you do? In such case, the doctor took the case and all that and sent it to me. And I saw in the case calcarea carbonica clearly indicated. Also, the general state of the patient was quite good already by the first medicines he has taken. So, as homeopaths, we have to assume that 95% this is not a cancer case. We don't have a real cancer case. It may look like cancer, but it's not a cancer case. So I took the chance and I wrote in the history of the report that this most probably is not a cancer case. Let her take, because the doctor was asking my opinion, what we should say. Give her calcarea carbonica, 200, one dose, and let her go to London to be examined there. Most probably, the tumor will be reduced by the time she is in London. And this is written down. I mean, the patient went to London. After, I think, 15 days, she went to London. They examined, and they said, where is the cancer? We don't see any cancer. There was a very mild tumor left. I said, we see something, but this is not cancer. If you want us to take out and make a biopsy, we'll do it. The lady had the fear. She was diagnosed that she has cancer by the best specialist of Athens. I said, yes, I want it out. I want the biopsy. She had the biopsy, and there is the report of the biopsy. That is nothing cancerous in that. So we as homeopaths will have a different way of evaluating the pathology, of course, of the person. But unless we take the whole picture of the patient, how he feels in general, how he feels in mental, how he feels in emotions, how he feels in his physical energy, then we cannot come into any conclusion. Now, something which is technical, which I have seen it done by different doctors, is that after they take a good case and they have prescribed a correct remedy, eventually they mess up the case. The third, 4, 5 months there is a relapse, then there is confusion, then nothing is going on well. Why is that? Do you know why is that? Because there is not a correct way that the people have learned to take a follow-up. Once you have the initial picture of the patient and you have every symptom of his recorded, then on the follow-up he comes and says, oh, I feel wonderful, I'm well, and all that. You don't stop there. You go in every symptom that you had recorded in the beginning, and you ask how he feels on this symptom, how he feels on that symptom, on the other symptom, on the fourth, until you go through all symptoms. And when you report, you write, depression is better, or depression gone, or depression the same. Feeling of chilliness gone, or feels normal now, or it's worse now with the heat. Every symptom, you record, you had the picture of the defense mechanism, and now you record the second picture on which you are going to work and to decide. And if you do that, then you will find out that there are patterns which change with time until a certain moment where the pattern stabilizes. And the patient says, now I have remained now with these symptoms. The first remedy took care of a lot of symptoms, but there are a few which have been left, and together with some other auxiliary symptoms, simple symptoms, like cold, heat, desires, aversions, etc., they may give you the picture of the next remedy. There is another possibility that the person will tell you that I have now a symptom which you know it's a symptom that has been produced by the remedy. What does that mean? Does anybody know what it means? Proving. What it means?
At least that it was part of the disease picture, but it hadn't come up yet. It's part of the general condition of the person, and now with the remedy circulating,
Yeah.
but of course it comes to show.
Okay. Another idea? What it means? Huh? See? The clock. The drug. The proving. It's a proving. Yes? Yeah. Which is a proving. Yeah. Which is the same idea as a proving. Yeah. All these are correct. But what has really happened? Can one tell me? If you get only that information that you have given a natrum muriaticum, for instance, and says, hey, I'm now having headaches. And the headaches are starting in the morning around 10 o'clock. You know that is natrum muriaticum headaches. So what do you ask then, the patient?
If they lost any symptoms, they didn't get anything.
Did you? Yeah. 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 The question that must be asked in this case is how the patient feels in general, in spite of the headaches. In general. How do you feel in general? I mean, you have a headache. Yes, in general. If the answer is, I feel the same as before, we have a proving. If the answer is, I feel better in spite of the headaches, this is a confirmation that the remedy is correct. Never mind of all the other remedies, or all the other symptoms. The other symptoms may be less or more. A minor symptom might have been reduced by giving a natrum muriaticum. You might have reduced the pain on the right knee. But now the headaches are on. The general condition is the same. That's a suppression. That's a proving. In spite of the fact that he does not complain anymore about the pain on the knee. The pain on the knee for which initially he had come is better. The headache of natrum muriaticum is because the natrum muriaticum was very close to the case, but not exactly. So we can expect for sure the headaches will subside and the pain in the knee will reappear. And we can be sure that the remedy was wrong. But if she says, my pain in the knee is worse, and on the top of that, I have a headache. But how do you feel in general? Well, in general, I feel better. I have more energy. This is a confirmation the patient is going to do well. And then a patient can say, yes, you are going to be well. There you know he's going to be well. Only 25 minutes? Should I progress more? Huh? You want questions or you want me to progress?
I have a question. So I have a case like that. I asked her, did anybody in your family have this headache? She said, sure. My father and my grandfather already had that headache. What do you mean,
I don't understand the...
That's more. Your case, with the name from Europe.
Yes.
He feels better, but the headache's not there. The knee is gone.
Yeah.
Before I go into that, I asked this patient, did anybody in your family have this headache? You all of a sudden thought, she said, oh yeah, you brought on in me the same headache my mother and my grandfather had.
Yeah. That can happen, but unless the patient in general feels better, we do not have a cure. Unless the patient feels better in himself, the energy is better, we do not have a cure. We may have just a sensitivity of that patient towards natrium muriaticum. We touch that sensitivity, we made a proving, because exactly for the reasons that you said, that because the father and the mother, they had the headache, but the patient is not better in himself, is not better in energy. Then we have a proving. So you get another kind of patients, and this is very important. What I'm going to tell you, it's very important, and this is where most of the mistakes are made. He comes the first month, and he praises you, and he says, I'm so well, so better, and everything is okay. There was an aggravation, then with an amelioration, everything is okay. So you prescribe placebo, and you say, go and come after a month. He comes the second month or the third month, because you may allow 2 months for the third visit to see how things are developing. And then he says, I'm not well. If you had such a good aggravation and a good response, you have to immediately be suspicious. What has happened? So we inquire, the first thing we inquire is about antidotes. Did he antidote it with anything? You go through all that, you find he did not antidote. And then you inquire, again, you go on the first page of the report that you have, and you inquire every one of the symptoms. He said, I'm having a relapse. You have to find out what kind of relapse it is. When you go on the initial report, the third time, and you check in symptoms, you are finding that he reports all symptoms less than before. Some of them still are gone, some of them, especially the emotional symptoms, some of them are back, but not to the extent that they were before. So, some physical symptoms remain away. Some mental symptoms, emotional symptoms, you see, they are coming back, according to what he says, but not to the extent that they were before. The energy is a little bit low, not as good as it was immediately after the remedy. What are you going to do? You should wait, yes. But why you should wait? usually what happens with these patients is this, that they have been feeling very badly all along for years. Suddenly they come to a homeopath, gives a remedy, and they feel wonderful. This is like feeling free again. It's a wonderful feeling, which they enjoy very much. And they say, oh my God, if I keep on taking that medicine, I shall reach a samadhi. Yeah. So he comes back just because he wants some of the same remedy. So what you are giving him is placebo, of course. And he does not reach samadhi. So he starts to be disappointed a little bit. And then the emotion, the disappointment, I'm not getting any more better. On the contrary, And then the life, the stresses of life, create a little emotional disturbances. He's dealing perfectly with them, but he's not having that first initial vitality and boost of energy that helped. This is a natural condition. His feelings were intensified by the fact that he was freed from what he had before. They were very intensified. He was wonderful and all that. But we cannot expect that by giving a remedy, a sequence of remedies when he wants, that we shall take him higher and higher. And this is the place where most of the homeopaths, they will make a mistake and they will repeat the remedy. Now what is going to give if they repeat the remedy at that moment? If they repeat the remedy, you see the patient is already, rather he was very sensitive to that remedy because it cured him. So he still maintains a kind of sensitivity to the remedy, but it is not, he is not resonated at exactly the same resonance. So if you repeat this remedy, you are going to create a proving on him. Untimely repetition of a remedy on a person who is sensitive to it, you're going to create a proving. A proving would mean he will feel worse, even worse. Then you repeat the remedy. He comes back after the third month. He says, now I am worse. I have this, I have that, I have that. And I said, oh my God, now what shall I do? Then you search for another remedy and you give the complementary of the first remedy. But this is wrong. So he comes the fourth month and it's more confusion. And you give another remedy. And unless you are keeping check with the first report, you are keeping check what is happening. And then what you will see usually is after giving a series of wrong remedies, he will most probably come back to the original state. That means you are relapsing him through the wrong prescription to the initial stage. But when he has a relapse to the initial stage, you think, because you had given a natrum muriaticum the second time and did not work as the first, you think natrum muriaticum is not good for him anymore. So you never prescribe the original remedy that you should prescribe. So you have to watch to see from the initial, always make the comparison with the initial report. And when you see the initial symptoms coming back, then you repeat again the same potency, the same remedy, not the same potency. You repeat one potency higher. If there is a relapse, this is something which I forgot to tell you. Usually the rule is that if a remedy has worked, repeat the same potency. I would stick to that rule if a remedy has been antidoted only, which means we do not know how much this remedy could have done for that patient because it was antidoted, therefore I have to repeat the same potency. But if a potency has exhausted its action, without the interference of an antidote, then you go and repeat one potency higher. So you don't repeat twice the same potency. If the remedy has exhausted its action, you go immediately straight to a higher potency. And of course you have cases where they will come and tell you they have deep pathology. You have cases that you're very careful, you have given a low potency, and they come and will tell you that they feel very well. Indeed, and it was very, very impressive, the amelioration without the precedence of an aggravation. This is a case where it is rather unfortunate, and you may suspect that the case is incurable. Usually such an amelioration does not last more than 15 days. 15 to 20 days. Then there is a relapse. Immediate amelioration. In a deep pathology case, immediate amelioration. 15, 20 days. Better. Don't be overexcited. He's going to have a relapse. When he has a relapse, in such cases, you will find another remedy is indicated, not the same. The same will usually do nothing. And you will notice, if you take clearly the symptoms, the new symptoms, and you compare them with the first visit, that they have changed somewhat. So give the next remedy. In these cases, we can palliate. We cannot cure. Okay, in cases where we have deep pathology, you have seen a serious case of liver cirrhosis. It feels dragged down and all these symptoms, and you give a remedy and he feels better. Immediately, without an aggravation. This amelioration is going to last 10, 15, the most 20 days, and is going to start relapsing. Then you only have to wait until you see the next remedy to prescribe. Usually the same remedy will not do anything to the patient, to that patient. You will find that another remedy is indicated. And this is an incurable case. We only can palliate and of course these cases can go quite long. I had a case of cancer of the liver, diffused, which was operated, unoperable and all that, and the lady was back home. It was a big tumor in the abdomen, and she went through a series of 5 or 6 remedies, and she lived for another 2 years. She was an old lady. She lived another 2 years. She lived without pains, in good condition. She died from cancer. We cannot say in these cases that we cure him. So an aggravation is very important. But many times an aggravation is confused with either a continuous process of the patient going on with his symptoms without the effect of any remedy, and it is confused as an aggravation. Some other times, if you stop the drugs from a patient who is taking drugs, if you stop them, then you see tremendous aggravations which you may attribute to your remedy, and These aggravations may be fatal to the patient also. If there is something, a heart case that you take away the drugs from him, and then you think he has an aggravation, and it's good because of your remedy, and your remedy has not worked, really, then you may have a fatal case. Also, I had noticed that severe symptoms that are dangerous to the patient I just wanted to relate a case, but I don't know what's called in the suprarenal glands. Theochromocytoma, with the theochromocytoma. Theochromocytoma. The doctors will know, most of you will know what it is. Theochromocytoma. That was diagnosed as such with it. Catecholamines, what's the catecholamines? No, all right. That is a disease, that is a malignant tumor in the suprarenal gland that produces a very high hypertension, which can cause, of course, a brain episode. And this patient, in this case, orthodox medicine suggests surgery. It's the only cure they have, supposed to be a cure. So this patient came to us, was seen by us, and he said that I have been scheduled for an operation. I said, okay, you carry on with the operation, because this is the best thing to do. But the patient refused to do that. He said, no, I'm not going to go through an operation because I have decided that I shall rather die with that disease than go through the operation. So I put him out actually of the consulting room. Then he stayed in the waiting room until I came out again. His relatives came back and said, he's not going to have, he's going to die anyhow, so there won't be any harm in trying homeopathic treatment. So we took him back and we prescribed for him staphysagria. The first thing which happened with him was that his blood pressure was down. So, I mean, there are lots of things, or lots of examples like that. So we see, what we notice is that during an aggravation, there are the organism will try the symptoms which are very dangerous to reduce them. And I have found out that we are not, if we are prescribing correctly, we are not in danger during the aggravation. There was never, this is my teaching, there is never a danger from an aggravation. Because the organism knows what to do at the moment. Of course, if the aggravation continues, what we call the aggravation, I mean the sequence of the disease continues and you need to give a remedy after 5 days and you don't give it, you may have a fatal case. I repeat that. And one has to be very experienced to handle such cases. This was one of the nice cases that we had, because such severe cases can impress the allopathic profession. So we shall just have 5 minutes for questions. Okay. Could you repeat?
Yeah, so if you have a person who's healthy and is doing very well for 6 to 9 months, very few symptoms, but then there's a relapse primarily only on the physical plane, not yet in the deeper planes. Lesser than the original state.
Yeah, there you have to judge whether the physical complaints are worthy of a prescription. That means if the person is really suffering and you have to do something, you may take the chance of repeating the remedy since the physicals are there and not the mentals. But it is better if the suffering is not so great to allow some time for such a relapse, because sometimes it happens that there is, due to stress or due to some antidoting influence, there is a going down on the person, and then by itself is going to come up again without the need of another remedy. So do not be in a hurry to prescribe unless it is a physical symptom that really disturbs you. Give him some placebo. You are not using placebo here, and placebo is a very good thing. Yeah.
Steve?
Along the same line, suppose that a person with human apples, he definitely treats apples on all levels, and concerning the way you like to feel. And 6 to 9 months go by, and they improve, but they finally stabilize. And yet they're still suffering. The picture is less intense on all levels than it originally was, but 3 months intense.
That's a stalled case.
When do you decide or what do you do?
This is a question about what George calls a stalled case, where there's been improvement, but it hasn't gone completely to cure, and it stays stable for quite a long number of months, 6 months, 9 months. Huh?
When you let some time go by.
Yeah, in this case, you may repeat a higher potency. If really the symptoms are the same but less intense, and there is a long period where they stay stable, you can repeat a higher potency of the same remedy.
It's the same remedy because it's the same symptoms. Here?
Yeah.
The question is about the length of action of particular remedies.
Yeah. No, I have not confirmed that. And actually I have confirmed the opposite, that many times an aconite will perform a real cure, a deep cure, on a chronic ailment, like Rastos will do, like Priona, constitutional remedy that will do tremendous benefit to the patient for a very long time. So actually I have not, in my experience, proved that this idea. Yet there is definitely an action on deeper levels of some remedy. That is definite. Like calcaria, like silica, like sulfur, mercury, phosphorus, and deep remedy.
I mean, they'll last a long time.
Yeah, and they do. Yeah. If they are indicated, they will perform cures on deeper levels.
Claire? The question is if somebody is relatively young and fairly healthy, can they cope with severe aggravations? Even severe aggravations. That's almost a confusion in terms. If they're that healthy, they're not likely to have it. If somebody has a strong vital force, then it won't take much of an aggravation to cure what they have already. Corey? And when you want to palliate
an incurable case, do you have any recommendations about potency and frequency of repetition of the remedy?
Yes. When you want to palliate a case, that means you know that the pathology is quite bad and there is no question of curing that patient. And if you go really deep into the case and you ask questions from the past, and you may find out that the constitutional remedy of that person was sulfur. I would refrain from prescribing such an accurate remedy on such a very severe case, and I would rather take his superficial picture which he has at the moment and prescribe a low potency. That means up to 30, either 12 repeated doses or 30. You may repeat 30 also 3, 4, 5 times in succession, one every month. We do that with the idea in mind that maybe in 1 in a million the person is stimulated, we may have a better picture at the moment and a better condition of the patient. So, if we have even that very little possibility, we may eventually bring back to health that individual. But if we decide that there is no hope at all, it is a matter of 24 hours for the patient still going to live and he is in agony, then we prescribe the best possible remedy, even the constitutional, in a very high potency. I was called, shall I say story?
Oh, you mean the one?
Yes.
Okay, why don't we finish with this story? This'll go ahead and tell the story. And that'll be the last question.
Yeah. I had a case of cancer that I had been treating, and this case was diagnosed as cancer of the thyroid. The lady was about 76 years old, and her son consulted, because he was a very wealthy man and powerful man in Greece, consulted all the different specialists. The specialist said, of course, that he was going to die eventually from choking, and that is a terrible death to see, and that they had to do something to prevent her from choking. So they suggested chemotherapy. I had been treating this case and she was doing fairly well. She could not swallow her food. She would take 1.5 hours to take her food, but that was all. There was no pain. She could breathe easily and all that. They decided to give chemotherapy. They took her in the hospital. The first day she was exhausted completely. They decided to stop the chemotherapy. They took her out, and then I gave back again the medicine, and she recovered to the point that where she was before. Then they had another meeting. They brought a Swedish expert on radiation. So they decided to radiate, though it is very dangerous in this area to radiate. They decided to radiate. When they started radiation, the 7th day, the lady became really a corpse. She was choking to death. She was blue. She was hardly able to take a breath. The specialist, the Swedish specialist, was consulted by phone by the radiologist that was in charge of the case. He said, what shall we do? The lady is dying. She's on the 7th day of radiation. So many runs have been given and all that. She is almost collapsing, cannot breathe. What shall we do? He said, continue the radiation. He said, yes, but we cannot continue the radiation because we cannot move the lady from the walls, we cannot move her down. I mean, what shall we do? Just continue the radiation. So just close the phone, and at this point I was called to see what I could do, and I had to consult with the chief of the hospital. This is a hospital, a university hospital in Athens, and we consulted on his house in the presence of the son of this lady. So I discussed the case. I went first and I saw the case. I saw she was dying, the lady, she was dying, she was choking to death. So in front of her son, I asked the chief of the hospital whether he thought this lady was going to die tonight. So he said, most probably. I said, yes, okay, then since you agree that she may be dying tonight, I shall take the chance to give her homeopathic remedy, but not that her death will be attributed to the homeopathic remedies. So we agreed to that, and she gave orders to stop all different, she was taking cortisone at that time, antibiotics to prevent different infections and all that. Everything was stopped. I went there and I prescribed a dose of phosphorus serum, because I had agreed with the son that if the lady comes back and then suddenly she passes out, it is quite all right. We don't want to see any more the agony. You know, the lady was in agony for 7 days during the radiation. She was choking more and more. It was terrible for her children to see. And it was interesting for the chief of the hospital also to see the effect, because he knew the case. And I went there, and there was another point also against homeopathy, that the lady had predicted a few days ago that I'm going to die on such a day. That means the day I went to give the remedy. Because her husband had died on the same day, and she thought, now I'm going to die also. And she had said to every child of hers and everything that she was going to die. So I gave the phosphorus serum, and I remained with her until 1 o'clock in the night, where the midnight had passed, just to see what was going to happen. She did not die anyhow, but she was choking, of course. She was hardly able to breathe, never mind to eat. She could eat nothing, absolutely. She was fed by the intravenous saline. And the next day, the chief of the hospital came, made his rounds, went there, saw the lady. I was in his office. He came back. She was alive. But of course this did not impress him, you know, because the man had been alive. So he said, I don't know. And then the next day, he came there, the lady was still alive. He auscultated. He thought, maybe she's doing better, because her breathing was better, and some of the blueness in the face was gone. Anyhow, the fourth day, he comes to me and says, okay, this is a victory for homeopathy. The lady was breathing now, and then he said, I now can perform a tracheostomy on her, because this is going to relieve her more. I said, I don't want any drugs. He said, okay, I shall do a local anesthesia, and I shall give no antibiotics, nothing. Before the lady, they could not even think of a tracheostomy because of the condition of the lady. And when we discussed the case in the beginning, he said, I cannot have a tracheostomy on her because she is going to die on the table, that's for sure. So there is no possibility that she will be living. So if you could do something, we have given up. I mean, we cannot do anything. She reached the point where a tracheostomy could be performed. He performed the tracheostomy. The lady came out of the surgery room. She was quite all right, even writing poems, because she could not speak, you know. She would write poems, she would write things. I mean, she was feeling quite all right even after the tracheostomy, though the improvement because of the tracheostomy was practically nil. Why? Because the tumor was pressing, constricting lower the trachea than the place of the tracheostomy. And of course, he knew that might have happened, that might do a tracheostomy that will have no effect. He knew that. Eventually, the lady, she got so well that the specialists, they thought that now we have given, I think, the Swedish specialist had said that if we had given 7,000 rands of radiation, this lady might live quite a long time. So they had given so far 5,000. So there was another 2,000 to be given after 6 or 7 months of relapse. So they said, let's give another 2,000 rand to completely the treatment of the, according to the direction of the Swedish. They gave one more radiation, and the lady never recovered. She went into a collapse and died after a few days in a coma. So that is where we see what homeopathy can do, can relieve in incurable cases. Thank you.